What's going on, everybody? Welcome. Today is Monday. It's May 16th, 2022. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first cup. Good morning to Stacy and Tommy and Jenny and all the rest of you, whether you're watching live, later, perhaps listening. Thanks for coming by. How was your weekend? How was my weekend? Can you hear it in my voice? I'm still sick, but I'm much better. Made the right call, unfortunately, to cancel all the weekend travel and all the wonderful whistlekick things that were lined up. And this is just the reality. Sometimes you get sick. Sometimes you try to do everything and it doesn't work out. That's kind of where we're at. Hello, Dennis. Hello, Gad. Dennis says, it's Monday again already? I know, right? Doesn't feel like it should be Monday already. But then again, my timeline's off because I spent most of Thursday and Friday in bed. Just a heads up, I owe emails and a number of things to quite a few of you. My hope is that I'm not going to catch up on everything today. It's just not possible, but I will start catching up today because I'm actually able to function and do work. Whereas I wasn't able to Thursday and Friday. My brain wasn't working, but my brain's pretty close to 100% now. What did I do this weekend? Spent a bunch of time in the garden, building more raised beds, did a bunch of other stuff around the yard, hung out outside a little bit. And, I think that's a big part of why I felt better. So I'm going to try to get outside today as much as I can. And it's funny, I think back to the whole premise of 12 Months to Health. What's in there? What are the things that are so fundamental to health that we included them in there? Things like water and sleep and movement and all that. Okay. Well, which of those things have I been neglecting? And honestly, I think it's being outside, just kind of moving around. There has not been as much of that as I would like. There's been plenty of movement, but not as much of it outside as I would like. So, Stacy says, nature. And she says, more tea and honey. I don't add sweetener. When I'm sick, I don't give the little critters anything that they can feed on. As much as possible. I really try not to. There are different perspectives on honey, and one of them from some of the herbalists I've worked with is that the stuff in your body, the stuff you don't want there, honey is a pretty good fuel for it. So Jenny says that she had a very nice weekend with the kids, celebrated the fact that my second child may actually make it to his 18th birthday tomorrow without any of his four parents killing him first. Ha! I love it. So what else is going on? What's going on today? Well, first off, let me read this to you. So this goes back to I think I posted this for last Wednesday, but we didn't get to it. Maybe it was for last Thursday. Anyway, the question, because we had a pretty good flow going for a while about questions. I'd post something in Facebook and some of you would respond and we'd talk about it on the show. And I want to get back to that. And the question I posed last week was, can a community be unhealthy? Or if it is it then not a community? And I don't believe we talked about that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to talk about that later on today. And of course, we've got some stuff from Frank. I have tea this morning. Had a wonderful call on Friday with the newest team member who none of you know yet. We're onboarding him slowly. He's got it. He's the first one to tackle the job that he's got. But as soon as he's got that job under control, he'll have some other things. And I'm really excited for this person. But we had a call, pretty much, I think it was the only call I had on Friday. I slept almost the entire day, woke up, had a call. We talked for an hour. I pretty much crashed after that. And I think I slept until Saturday morning. But it's what I needed. I need more sleep. I'm going to be taking naps today. You do what you got to do. Take care of your body. Right. Anything else going on today? I'm supposed to have a firearms lesson today. I'm going to move that. because I am not well enough to be in confined spaces with people. Oh, I'm supposed to have a dental cleaning. We're going to move that. It probably means I'm not going to get my teeth cleaned for another like 6 months. Ugh. Oh well. Oh, and got to change it. I'm getting it. This is a really busy Monday. This is unfortunate. And the tires are getting changed over on one of my cars. Lovely. Oh well. You do what you got to do. I don't know. I'll check my temperature. We'll see what's going on. My dentist wears, everybody at the facility wears hazmat suits. Seriously, if there's one place I can go, it's there. I'll take some time and think about it, and I'll review their policies and see what they want. Because last I knew, I didn't have a temperature. I just feel crummy. And Jenny says, at least you don't have a book meeting. Yeah. All right, so let's switch over. Let's switch into what Frank gave us to talk about. As always, thank you to Frank. And today it's legendary Japanese judoka Shozo Fujii turned 72 this past Thursday. Here's some facts about him from judoinside.com. He was 4 times world champion from 71 to 79. Think about being really good at anything, you know, in a sport that does do a good job of recognizing, you know, like world championships. Karate doesn't do that. Taekwondo doesn't do that, right? Because we have different rule sets based on different flavors. Judo pretty much agrees, right? Like, I'm sure there are some detractors, but competitive judo is, for the most part, competitive judo. At least my understanding of it. And then you've got somebody that across 8 years was champion 4 times. Think about the athletes that are able to accomplish things like that over the sort of a span. 8 years is a long time. When you're talking about training that hard, putting your body through that, to be that good, I mean, it's remarkable. It starts to, you think about the people who do that in any sport, and those start to be Hall of Fame athletes. He won the Tournoi de Paris, I'm assuming the Tournament of Paris, and the Kano Cup. Well, the Kano Cup, most likely named for Jigoro Kano, founder of judo. And Shozo Fujii won the All Japan Judo Championships many times and grabbed the Asian Championships in 74 in the under 80 kilogram and the open weight. Wow. You know, I find judo really interesting because it's so old. And in some circles, it receives tremendous respect. But it seems like outside of those circles, it gets no respect. If you ask the average person on the street about judo versus nearly any other combat sport or martial art, they know almost nothing about judo. And when I think about the people that we've had on the show, oh, speaking of which, it's Monday. When I think about the guests that we've had on Martial Arts Radio who come out of the judo world, they have been some of the most passionate, dedicated, absolutely remarkable athletes and episodes that we've had. Andrew did well in his competition yesterday. We saw his performance. I was proud of him. I'm pulling up, what is today's episode? Matthew Eiler. Let me remind myself of who Matthew Eiler was. Well, that's not letting me flip that around. How about this one? When did we do this? April 12th, so a month ago. So forgive me if my memory is not quite serving. Okay. Yep. I'm not going to give any of this away. I know most of you guys listen to most episodes, so check it out. Episode 710 with Master Matthew Eiler. It's a good time. I remember liking him. I like most of the guests on the show, but you already knew that. Tommy says, as far as organized, judo definitely has its act together. Yep. Which is good and bad. Right? Like I see nothing wrong with kind of the free market competition of having a number of different ways to compete or evaluate a martial art. But it does become frustrating when you end up with competitions that attract, 50 people and they call it a world championship or a national championship. If it's open invitation and you have that kind of attendance, I think it's really hard to call it that. You could make an argument that the NBA winning the NBA title is like being the world championship of basketball. Even though the teams only play in the US and Canada, there is international representation, and the best people do tend to end up in that league. So you could make a case for that. You may not be able to make the same case for baseball, though, because there are a lot of really good players in a lot of other areas. Maybe they're not quite Major League Baseball level, but on a given day, a lot of those teams would give a Major League team a run for their money. I'm constantly torn between centralization, because it's easier, and distribution, because it permits growth. And if you look at it right, rapid growth. I'm a big free market capitalist. I think most of you know that. You leave the gates open, and you see what people want. And that could be a whole dozen discussions. But instead of doing that, let's talk about this question here. Why are you not going to let me share this? I want to share that. Don't be silly. Sharing. There we go. Can a community be unhealthy? Or if it is it then not a community? We've got a couple responses here. One of my first reactions is that something being unhealthy is pretty subjective, but I think you can look at most things that would be healthy or unhealthy in a community, get reasonable consensus. Dennis says, given how we defined community yesterday, I would say it would be difficult to call a group that in unhealthy, Okay. Given how we defined community yesterday, I would say it would be difficult to call a group unhealthy. I'm not able to read that well. I would say we could call it okay. I know what he's doing. Given how we defined community yesterday, I would say it would be difficult to call a group that in unhealthy a community. Group that unhealthy. I would say we could call it an unhealthy or toxic group, but not a community. And then Gad adds on, a cult is also a community, but of the unsavory kind. Some martial arts schools operate as a cult. They give a false sense of community and belonging. What was Louis's book? The True Believers. If you haven't read The True Believers by Louis Martin. We did an episode on that. I read the book. Probably one of very few episodes for which I read the book, because what he was talking about was remarkable. And I wanted to dig into it. So we've got some answers here, which I'm excited about. Ray says, yes, a community can be unhealthy. I believe that people in that unhealthy community don't see it, though, as I believe that people as a whole try to be good and decent. But through, most often, a series of subtle influences, there can be a shift towards an unhealthy. Thus, the people within the community most often don't realize how unhealthy it truly is, as they can only see the actions of their community as to benefit that group and can't see that it actually is unhealthy. I think the biggest example of a community that becomes unhealthy is when the priority becomes the priority of investment, time, energy, money, becomes on increased standing within the community. This is where my very, very basic understanding of, say, Scientology comes into play, right? As a similar example. From what I have read, I'm not a Scientologist. I have not actually participated in anything Scientology. I've merely read about it. Okay. So I say that to carve out space that, yeah, maybe I'm not accurate here. But from what I have read, once you are part of the group, once that you have been brought into Scientology, there's a tremendous amount of training that is put forward as the priority in your life, and it is all very expensive. There are martial arts schools that operate similarly, and I think that that is the issue. Communities have things that bind them together. If what binds the community together is a mutual agreement to spend all of your money and give it to somebody else, that starts to get into cult territory. Stacy agrees, says, oh, what Ray said. Tommy says, or when hostility becomes greater than your compassion with your neighbors. So I'm curious, the rest of you, what are your thoughts on this? What makes a community unhealthy? It can be something very specific. It can be something that's a little broader conceptually. And keep in mind, there are exceptions to nearly every rule that we might come up with. I tend to think about communities that I look at, I'm like, I look at what they produce. You know, one of the compliments that I will give at a martial arts competition, I will go up to the instructor and say, you know, I have observed a number of your students today, and they all conduct themselves as good people. And quite often the instructor will try to pass that off, saying, no, that's you. It's very clear where that comes from. When everybody in a school operates well, when they're good people, when they treat each other kindly, yeah. Josh says, I agree with Ray. Also, for a lot of groups, the focus at some point comes to furthering the sustainability of the group rather than focusing on the members. And then at that point, I think it's easy for the group to get mired in bureaucracy. The libertarian in me wants to draw a correlation there, and I'm not going to. Some of you probably can guess it. Oh, Stacey, I love this. Bringing together a group of alcoholics sounds like a bad idea on the surface. Bring them together to form a common goal. It's community. I think the value of community, especially when you look at communities that maybe are a little less healthy, right? Where the common thread, alcoholism, or let's say drug use. I won't name others that are rough. For some of those people, for a lot of those people, there's trauma. There's trauma that creates some of those actions that informs their understanding. And sometimes being around people that understand where you've come from, that don't make you feel judged for some of these horrible things, is really important. People want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to feel valued. And I think martial arts schools have a wonderful opportunity to create a culture where that happens. And all the things that make a school successful support that. Getting to know people, social events, being inclusive, appropriate styles of correction and degrees of correction, and getting people involved. This is why one of my favorite things is having people who are very new helping with instruction. You learned this last week. How well do you know it? Well enough to do it yourself? Okay, teach it to that person. Are they going to do it perfectly? No. So what? You screw it up sometimes too. But when everyone feels like they're invested in the educational output of everyone else in the school, that's pretty remarkable. Some really good stuff happens there. Jenny says, I'm having trouble finding words to describe the feeling I'm having on this topic. But at the basic level, I feel that once the shift to unhealthy occurs, it's no longer a community. More of a dictatorship or cult, as some have said. Even if there's a common goal, it's not designed around building up each person involved, so no longer a community. All communities don't have to be, and I agree, but a community doesn't have to necessarily involve building up everyone. Think about something like Habitat for Humanity. That's a lot of investment from a lot of people, time, effort, money, to make a house for none of those people. What's another good example? When someone posts like a GoFundMe, right? Like that money's going to a small portion of the community, or maybe even not in the community. Maybe it's leaving the community. So this is why I find this topic interesting, because it's so incredibly subjective and fluid. But I like some of the things that we're pulling out of this. Andrew says, community can be such a huge benefit in so many ways. Honestly, it's one of the reasons I did the tournament yesterday. Kelly says, I think communication is an important part of a good community so that the leader is aware of what their participants need and want and realize it can change from when they first started. Is the leader still supporting the personal growth within the group? Dennis says, no greater community than the martial arts community. I agree, and I suspect most of you also do. So I'll post another question about community because it's clear that there's more for us to say. And a couple of you gave me some thoughts there. So I'm going to mull over some things for a few minutes and make a decision. Post something in the Facebook group. If you want to contribute to that and kind of help kick it off, I would appreciate that. Facebook.com/firstcupwithjeremy. If you want to support us, if you love whistlekick and what we do, our mission to connect, educate, and entertain, you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. You can use the code FIRSTCUP15 at whistlekick.com on anything. And you can find the whole list of all the things you can do, from ratings, reviews, as well as bonus behind-the-scenes stuff. whistlekick.com/family. Gets updated weekly. Did not get updated last week because I lost 2 days. We do the show every weekday, 6:30 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We're in the episode, like 1010 now or something. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we are on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're on Twitch. Reminder, please make a Twitch account. If you have trouble making a Twitch account, ask me for help. I'll help you. Shouldn't need help, but if you do need help, I'll help you. We need to get to 50. We're at like 7 last I looked. All these comments. Wow. Yep. I'm not going to read all these. Those of you who listen only, maybe once in a while you pop onto Facebook or YouTube. Facebook would probably be the best place, because if you watch these videos on Facebook, you can see all the comments come through at the times that people left them. And I think that's really fun. So that's it. That's all I got for you today. Until next, no, that's how I close the show. The other show. I will see you back here tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Peace.